I have made the airplane trek from Massachusetts to my seminary, Star King School for the Ministry, near San Francisco, dozens of times since fall 2017. And this week, Wednesday, I will go one last time to participate in the ritual of commencement and parade around with a flat, square hat on that I will then promptly give back to the person who just loaned it to me after the ceremony. They will tell me that I have mastered divinity, though exactly what that means continues to elude me. I will confess that in spite of feeling like I kind of did grow myself into a minister here these last 3.5 years, I also don't think I'll ever fully understand ministry. One of my favorite descriptions is that doing ministry is like learning to play the violin naked in public. To which I will add that being a brand new minister, beginning during COVID, was like learning to play the violin naked in public and having all your practice sessions recorded and posted on the internet for anyone to see. Anyone. Future employees, potential new friends, somebody digging up dirt. It has been intense. Especially for those of us who, like me, had never once sat in front of a camera and videotaped ourselves before, let alone posted it for infinity and beyond. I do have one new thing to be grateful for from that, which is that when I was learning to be a music therapist 27 years ago, not a single session I did with a client was recorded and posted on the internet. I have gratitude for that. I think COVID shifted and changed the nature of ministry and worship and church in ways that are going to continue to unfold over the next decades. Many of us who go into parish ministry do so, of course, because we love church. Not really because we had aspirations of becoming televangelists or tech experts. We become ministers, as Reverend Dr. Mark Morrison Reed wrote, to help sustain religious communities, places made holy by what people experience in them, the seasons of their lives and the healing of their souls. Gathering in ritual, in community, means something to us. We soon discover, however, that terms and conditions apply to ministry. Terms and conditions like, in order to serve as a parish minister, you have to give up going to church. Terms and conditions like, you will love your congregation and your parishioners with all your heart, and then you will leave them. The end of Mary Oliver's exquisite poem In Blackwater Woods is still the most succinct and beautiful and poignant description I know of what I'm going to call our human terms and conditions. To live in this world, you must be able to do 3 things. To love what is mortal. To hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it. And when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. So often in the media, terms and conditions apply, and those terms and conditions are sneaky. And sometimes the ones that are our human terms and conditions are just as sneaky as those advertisers' special promotions. And somehow, if you read all the fine print, it really means that the offer is only good for licensed drivers between the ages of 10 and 11 who live in Alaska. And so the guy, duly apologizes, I'm sorry, you don't qualify, because no one does. Terms and conditions are supposedly mentioned because they're important to us. But consistently, right, if it's out loud advertisement, the details are spoken so fast that we can't get it. Or the print is in such small type, and there's so much of it, that we also can't possibly take it in. So what is that about? It turns out, I think, when humans receive our most important terms and conditions, we're not speaking or understanding English yet. We're not even reading fine print, because they're given to us when we're born. Welcome to Earth, it might say. We cannot wait for you to meet the frogs croaking like maniacs. We're excited for the human hearts deeper than the unimaginably deep concerns. We're excited for all the full cups of delight you will encounter. We can't wait to hear your song of praise. Terms and conditions apply. And it's only later when we run into somebody we love and they turn up looking absolutely gobsmacked and their eyes are glazed over and red, and we say to them, "What is going on with you?" And they stammer something about how they just read the fine print on the terms and conditions of birth. And you're like, "Really? Well, I mean, what did it say?" And they just shake their head. So you go and read it yourself. And maybe it says something like, terms and conditions for living. Pretty much anything can happen to pretty much anyone at pretty much any moment. And there's pretty much nothing at all you can do to control or change that. Further, in agreeing to be born, you're also agreeing that you will die. And everyone you know and love will die as well. That's enough to stop us. Terms and conditions indeed apply. We're required to sign on for mortality. But Mary Oliver's first instruction isn't just, know you are mortal. She says we have to love what is mortal. Death is a requirement, but the end of love is not. Change is a requirement, but the end of love is not. Goodbyes are required, but the end of love is not. So here in Earth School, we practice letting go. We practice saying goodbye. And we practice holding it side by side with loving. The good news is that we have so many opportunities to practice letting go that we never have to worry if we miss one, because for sure there will always be another one. It's always good to sort of practice with the ones that aren't super devastating. It's like they tell you to practice meditation if you've got the middle seat on an airplane. Just a slight annoyance, right? So maybe you have a sweet, enjoyable evening with someone, and then you practice letting the evening actually end and not clinging to the time or the person, not bemoaning it wasn't longer, just loving that it happened. Loving what is mortal and holding it against our bones and letting it go. It doesn't, not just for the big stuff. I had a wonderful visit recently with a friend I don't get to see enough, and we were hugging goodbye, and they said, "I miss you so much." I said, "We've just had 3 hours together, and I'm right here. In fact, I could not be any closer to you right now than I am. And I miss you so much." And of course, I get it, and you get it, right? It just sort of seems like such a significant design flaw that our minds are catapulting between reruns of our worst moments and rehearsing potential future suffering. When there is significant change on our horizon, an upcoming goodbye, maybe a loved one is moving far away, your child is going off to college, somebody you know is facing terminal illness, maybe you're leaving a job, maybe you're facing a decline in your own health, maybe you're in the middle of ending a significant relationship, maybe a church member, maybe even a student minister in residence is moving on. It can bring up previous loss and change and grief. The grief comes with the love, always. Loving, all these different kinds of loving is like such a huge and astoundingly miraculous, mysterious force that, of course, lots of terms and conditions are going to apply. In this case, some of the fine print says, the tax that you're required to pay on love is grief. We grieve all kinds of loss and change. Grief is love in another form. And I don't think there's a single person in this room who doesn't know it intimately. So we practice letting go and loving, because there is love after death and there is love after goodbye. I'm wondering if any of you, if you pause right now, can you bring to heart and mind someone you really love who is not physically in this room? Give it a shot. Who was able to do that? Yeah. Okay. There is no reason love needs to be attached to physical presence. This is how we know that there is love after goodbye. This is how we know that there is love after death. Never, not on the before side or the after side of the goodbye, do we have to stop loving. The actual goodbyes are hard, of course. Sometimes we kind of mumble and we might say there aren't words because the words are challenging and vulnerable, and maybe they're stuffed down inside a little bit and they're hard to fish out. And also, I don't know how you feel about it, but for me, the feelings are so enormous and the words are so tiny, and I always feel like I'm trying to squash it into this little word, and it doesn't really work. Sometimes sound and movement work better for me. But it's all okay. It's all okay. However it happens, we just do what we can. Ritual helps with goodbyes. We know this. Acknowledgement of the leaving helps. And cake helps. Rituals help slow us down, help us take time to notice what it is that's ending, to put expression to what mattered about the relationship. Words aren't always required, but if the words come, sometimes they help us open. And that opening can actually help us with the separation. Goodbyes are messy, awkward spiritual work. We crack open a little, and there's some raw exposure and muck, and it's all okay. In saying goodbye, we try to lean into feeling the connection between us. We try to lean into the mixed emotions, lean into honoring how we've changed within this relationship. In saying goodbye, we take care of each other, we pay attention to the other person. And we do what we can to welcome the untidy, the unruly human muddle of it all. And we eat cake. It reminds me a little bit of the slogan Aaliyah and I have adopted, which is embracing imperfection since 1965. This is how we do goodbyes as well, imperfectly and beautiful in their imperfection. At the end of my first month here in February 2021, we had a ritual in which the congregation officially agreed to welcome me, to create a relationship of mutual trust and respect. You invited me into your lives, into the shared life of this church community. And the terms and conditions, beloveds, were out in the open. You said yes, knowing my ministry here would be time limited. You said yes to loving and to letting go, because you are a teaching congregation. And being a teaching congregation is very deep and important work. It's a role and it's a responsibility. It involves opening to and supporting the students, whatever we bring. And it's also a financial commitment. It's about $12,000 a year for an intern, which is a whole lot of money to raise, even while it's not actually that much to live on. But you are a fantastic teaching congregation. You have so much to offer. And I hope with all my heart that you will continue to support and grow this faith by investing your heart and your soul and your energy and your love and your finances in future ministers in formation. It really is legacy work that's investing in. It's nurturing and loving and growing ministers who are destined to leave you in just a couple years. Part of the reason I was able to start mid-pandemic, actually, was that even though this church wasn't officially seeking an intern minister, someone had already donated almost half of the first year's stipend to an intern fund. That's why they could say yes. Part of the reason. Of course, I charmed them as well, so, you know. Ministerial internships typically end after 2 years, and the intern moves on. We managed to finagle a couple of extensions here, totaling 1.5 years extra. But the terms and conditions from the beginning were that this is time limited. And although it may seem brief to you, especially as your settled minister has stayed here nearly 1/4 century now, my ministry here is actually my longest and most impactful ministry so far. Low bar, but, you know, true. I think the very center of this beautiful Unitarian Universalist faith is our trust in love. That trust in love is life-saving, and it's a huge part of why I've decided to offer the rest of my life to ministry. One of the first things Aaliyah said to me about you was, "This congregation loves ministers." And she was right about that. And believe me, some of them don't. It's hard. So you do know how to love what is mortal. You also know how to hold it against your bones as if your own life depended on it. In fact, you kind of like to hold on to people here, people you love. I love that about you. And it also means that you haven't had a lot of practice with staff transitions. And tragically, you may not have had a lot of cake. I worry about this. Your most recent 2 staff members who have left moved on during the pandemic, and both of them were already living in other areas of the country. And it was pandemic with masks, and so no cake. As far as church changes go, the big picture, my leaving is minor. Aaliyah and Sean and Cynthia and Cindy are all staying for now. And my separation, done as well as we can and as beautifully imperfectly as we can, is also preparation for future separations from each of those beloved folks. I know you don't want to think about it, and still, there are those pesky terms and conditions that apply. Mark Morrison Reed wrote in his Berry Street essay from 2000, "We do ministry knowing that someday the relationship will end. The challenge is to be there despite this. If we're not fully there in authentic relationship, we can go through the motions of ministry, but we can't really minister. We can't hold back because the power we have is in our relatedness to one another. And yet, ministers must hold back or risk conflating the professional with the personal. We can't hold back because our relatedness is with each other, and we have to hold back. And to minister is to wrestle with that dilemma." So we have 6 more weeks together. If anyone would like to meet with me one-on-one, I would love that. I made an online calendar for scheduling those meetings. The website is in your order of service. It's also in the weekly newsletter. Or you could just call the office Tuesday through Friday, and Cindy will help you. Lots of folks have had actually questions for me, so I'm creating a frequently asked questions document that I'll share soon. And I will be up here somewhere between heaven and earth one more time on June 2nd. The evening of June 2nd, we're also having a farewell potluck, and I hope as many people come as possible. One of the deepest lessons I have learned in ministry was actually 2019-2020. I was a student minister in the Montpelier, Vermont UU Church. I didn't live up there. I just drove up about 3 weekends a month. I don't know, does anybody else remember March, April, and May of 2020? Like the longest decade ever. Yeah, talk about terms and conditions changing. There was no cake. The minister in Montpelier, Reverend Joan Javier Duval, recorded during those months a new outgoing voicemail message for her congregation every single day. She said some words and she read a poem, and the messages were simple and down to earth. They were honest and calm. And I found myself stuck now down here in Massachusetts, calling, listening to those messages 3, 4, sometimes 5 or more times a day. And it didn't take me long to admit that I wasn't calling to hear the poetry again. I was calling because at the end of every single message, Joan simply said, "I love you." We were letting go of so much, and we all needed that loving. I needed to hear her say that. So my prayer as I move forward, one of them, is may I remember that we always need the loving. And may I never hesitate to say it. I love you.